So we're talking about our potential and using the seven leaderships to unlock your potential and become an unarmored leader. So, what? Hold on. Let's see. Okay, so what you're going to learn today, I'm going to talk a little bit more about unarmored leadership. What is it? I'm going to share my unarmored leadership coaching model, which is something that I created to help my clients dismantle their armor and see where they are on their path to becoming an unarmored leader. I'm going to talk about how the seven principles of unarmored leadership can help you transform your leadership and help you realize your potential. And I'm also going to share some practical tools to help you build self-awareness, build trust, and align with your values. So let's start with what is unarmored leadership? So unarmored leadership is a way of being. It's grounded in relationships, the relationships you have with other people, and more importantly, the relationship that you have with yourself. So unarmored leaders, they have strong self-awareness, they're naturally curious, they are their true selves, they lead with authenticity and empathy, they embrace vulnerability, they forge trusted and meaningful relationships, they empower and inspire others, and they actively build community. So unarmored leadership centers on dismantling your armor, releasing the fear-based mentality, the need for control, your limiting beliefs, your unproductive behaviors, and defensive postures that are impacting your ability to be an authentic, trusted, and effective leader. Now, to reconnect with who you are, to lead with your values, to change how you are showing up, you need to understand what's keeping you stuck and what you're holding on to or what you're carrying around. This is what I call your armor. So, what is armor? In simple terms, armor is the limiting beliefs, protective behaviors, and ways of being that keep us safe. They're passed on from our families, our friends, school, society, business culture, our current and former bosses, and other people. They tell us this is what you need to believe, what you should do, how we should be, and we accept these things as truth. It worked for them, so therefore it should work for us. So let me unpack each of these. So your limiting beliefs are the stories that we tell ourselves about our capabilities and worth. Limiting beliefs create an internal dialogue that keeps us striving for unattainable standards. And they make us feel like we don't have what it takes. So some limiting behaviors might sound like, I have to be perfect to be taken seriously, or this has to be perfect to be taken seriously. I have to be a hard ass like my boss in order to get the promotion. I can't trust myself. I'm too impulsive. Other people know what's best for me. Or successful people always have the answers. I can never say, I don't know. That will mean I will look stupid. I always have to know the answers. The second part of armor are your protective behaviors. And these are the actions that we take to protect ourselves from potential criticism, judgment, failure, maybe some uncomfortable feelings or potential consequences. So, protective behaviors look like avoiding risks to make sure that you don't look stupid or that you make mistakes. Dressing to blend in instead of standing out. That's something that you see a lot, a lot with women. They don't want to stand out, so they dress to blend in. Downplaying your achievements or your strengths because you don't want to look like you're bragging. That's a big protective behavior. And then lastly, your ways of being. Ways of being are our general demeanor and how we present ourselves to the world. So, for example, if you're putting on a facade of confidence, if you're telling yourself, I'm going to fake it till I make it, that way of being, the fake it till you make it energy, people can really sense that on you. And you're trying to protect yourself. So you're just going to show up that way. Um, Not sharing an opinion or staying silent in meetings to avoid potential judgment or criticism, or acting in a way that aligns with other people's expectations instead of your own. Um, I had recently worked with a woman who said, I've been feeling very confident. She's been in her role for a really long time. She had an opportunity to expand her team, and she hired this. He was a star, she said. He had come from another part of the organization, and she said he hit the ground running and he was doing a great job. And she said, all of a sudden, I found myself feeling threatened by him. I recognized that, oh my God, he seems to know so much more. So she started micromanaging him instead of allowing him the autonomy that he always had. She felt herself shrinking around him. She felt herself holding on to things that she would normally share to help him succeed. She felt threatened, even though she had an opportunity to elevate this person and bring him in and, mentor him because ultimately the people below you, if they're good at their roles, you're going to look good. So she realized that the confidence that she had, she was starting to chip away at that and trying to protect herself with all of these behaviors and showing up in ways didn't, that felt foreign to her, but all of a sudden that she was doing. So some signs that you're armoring up could include something like I just shared with you. When you get defensive, if someone gives you feedback, when you have to give feedback to someone, you think to yourself, okay, I have to make sure that I do this in a friendly way. And you're worrying about the relationship you're going to have with someone. So you start to use some protective language or things like that. So you're trying to protect yourself. You shrink in order not to draw attention to yourself. If you work remotely, I've seen it online, but I've had people tell me that if they're around like a big table with their bosses or their boss's boss, that if they ask questions, they will like move their chair and hide in a way. They'll shrink themselves. Um, I was leading a workshop a few years back, and it was small. There was about 10 people, and I asked everybody to go around and introduce themselves, to say their name and to say what their superpower was. And I could see in all the squares, I could see everybody in front of me. And I have to tell you, almost 80%, almost everybody immediately made themselves smaller because they were afraid that they would be criticized by the other people that were in the room or that they were faking it or it really, they really didn't have that superpower. So that's a protective behavior to make yourself look smaller. Um, you're armoring up when you want to do things differently, but you stop yourself because you don't want to rock the boat. If you feel like you're always ready for a fight, you're feeling very defensive, or you double down on your doing things your way instead of opening it up to other people's perspectives. So, in order to help my clients, um, let go of their armor, become more confident, and become more authentic. I created a model so that we could create some common language and that they could understand where they are on my coaching model spectrum. Now, at the end of the webinar, if you are curious, I'll put a link to my quiz so that you can take it. But as I go through it and share all of the different archetypes with you, ask yourself, what resonates with me the most? Where do I feel like I am? And who do I know that's this archetype? So here's the coaching model. The first archetype, which is on the fully armored side of the spectrum, is the knight. Everyone knows someone who's a knight. I have had several bosses who have been knights. Knights are fully armored and they don't recognize that they're wearing armor. They're very fixed in their thinking and their behaviors. It's their way or the highway. Hold on, let me just admit. It's their way or the highway. They're very defensive. They're controlling. They don't trust other people. They don't do vulnerability at all. They see vulnerability as a weakness. They're always on edge. They give off a negative or unsettled energy. I've had people say, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells when I'm around this person, that's a Knight. They will tell you all the reasons why things can't be done. They often double down on what they know. They do not like change, and they love the status quo. Sometimes they can play the victim, because that is where their power lies. And Knights can be, what? Hold on a second. Knights can be, they can be really, really quiet, or they can be really, really loud. So introverted, extroverted, it doesn't matter. They lead through fear and intimidation. Then we have the fencer. The fencers, they're mostly armored, they're guarded, they can be defensive, and they're beginning to recognize their armor. They're starting to notice that certain things aren't serving them anymore, that things don't feel right, that they want to be a little bit more authentic or change the way they're showing up. Although they're afraid of change, they it's like they feel pushed that in order for them to get the promotion, in order for them to be better at what they're doing, um, they're going to push themselves to do it. They're cautious about opening up to others, and letting them in, even though they know that if they are willing to be a little bit vulnerable, that could change the game for them. Um, when they're looking to grow, fencers often take one step forward, two step back, and they'll retreat to the discomfort they know versus the discomfort that they don't know. That's how you know that you're mostly a fencer. Then you have the wrestler. Okay, wrestlers, they have a learner's mindset. And I called them the wrestlers because they're aware of their armor, but they wrestle with letting it go. Wrestlers are clear on who they are, on who they want to be. They know what their desired behaviors are, but in the moment when they want to change that behavior, they can get stuck in retreating to what they know, where they feel safe. But the difference between fencers and wrestlers know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They recognize their armor. They really want to learn, but they can wrestle with exactly how they want to be showing up in the moment. Wrestlers ask for help. Unlike the Knights don't ask for help. Wrestlers ask for help, and they accept change and know that there are lessons when they're actively willing to explore new things. And lastly, you have the martial artist. The martial artist is unarmored. So they have a growth mindset. They are highly self-aware. They actively look to release anything that doesn't belong to them. So a martial artist doesn't mean that nothing bothers them. They're always themselves all the time. No, but they might realize and go, oh, wow, I'm doing this thing. I'm going to shift. I'm going to figure out why I'm doing this thing. They're very active in releasing anything that doesn't serve them. They're very comfortable with vulnerability. They challenge the status quo. They know who they are. They lead with their values. They are the same person in every room they're in. They don't pretend to be someone they're not. They share their strengths and they empower others. You know that you're around a martial artist because you feel really good about yourself when you're in their presence. They have a wonderful energy about them. So I'm curious, which archetype do you resonate with the most? Or who do you know that falls within this model here? You can throw it in the chat. I would just love to know as we go through this. Again, at the end, I'll share a link to take the quiz if you're interested in it. Now, how you move through the model. This is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the 7 principles of unarmored leadership and what you need to master in order to get from carrying some armor to having very little or being fully unarmored at the end. So here are the 7 principles. Building self-awareness, embodying your core values, leading with authenticity, being your true self, embracing vulnerability, building trusted relationships, empowering others, and having a growth mindset. These are the things that's going to take you from one end of the spectrum to the other, that's going to allow you to dismantle your armor. So let me start to unpack each one of these things. So the first principle is building self-awareness. Self-awareness is the foundation of unarmored leadership. You can't change what you don't acknowledge, what you don't recognize. You can't shift how you're showing up in the moment if you don't see what's happening inside you and outside of you. So self-awareness is observing your own thoughts, your habits, your behaviors, your triggers, and emotional responses without judgment. That's the key here, without judgment. You're not beating yourself up. You're just noticing, ooh, I'm shrinking. That's interesting. Wonder why that's going on. And you start to reflect on that, right? It's noticing, it's becoming curious, and it's reflecting on why something is happening. Leaders with high self-awareness, they're more adaptable, they're more emotionally intelligent. They're able to navigate challenges with clarity. They make better decisions, and they are role models for other people to do the same. Now, many people will say, "Oh yeah, I'm very, very self-aware." But when I've had conversations with clients and they're telling me about a situation that they have found themselves in that's really uncomfortable for them, and I ask them, hey, like, what were you thinking at the time? What was going on in your body? Like, was your heart racing? Was your throat closing? Like, what was happening? They can't answer because they weren't noticing. They just noticed that I feel really uncomfortable in this moment and I'm not going to do the thing. So our body is always in the present moment. Our head is often not in the present moment, but our body is. For instance, I had a client who she was struggling to speak up when she was in a group, and she couldn't understand why. She's like, my ideas were good. I felt comfortable, but in the moment, I could not do it. So I asked her the next time she found herself in a situation to take a moment and figure and like check in with her body and go, wait, what's happening here? And she said that she realized that her throat was getting really, really tight. It was the first time that she had noticed. And she had a flashback in that moment. She came from a big family and she was the youngest, and she was often never heard. Now, that was a huge aha moment for her. And she didn't need to go to therapy, but she was like, wait a second, that was really cool. Our body's always trying to tell us what's going on and what we're thinking and feeling in the moment. So the more you can be self-aware and check in with yourself throughout the day, the more information that you're going to find out about yourself. So there's a lot of gold when you're willing to take a beat and pause and take it all in. So an action step to building self-awareness is constantly going, wait, why am I triggered by this? What's going on here? What is my body trying to tell me? There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score. It's a big book, but there's a lot of great information in there. And the more you can check in with yourself and not only notice what's running, the script that's running or the stories that are running, is to also find out what your body is trying to tell you. The second principle is embodying your core values. So I have two questions for you. What are your top 5 values? And number two, which behaviors align with those values? Jeff Bezos has a great explanation of your personal brand. And that is, your personal brand are the words that other people use to describe you when you are not in the room. So these words are connected to our intentions, our behaviors, the language that we use. So essentially, the words, our personal brand is connected to our core values. So when you can identify your core values, it helps you navigate your decision making and keep you in integrity. When your behaviors don't align with your values, sometimes there's a lot of internal tension and you feel like you're not being authentic. So I'm going to talk more about this in a little bit and dive a little bit deeper into this. But getting clear, identifying what are your top 3 to 5 values, and then being able to say this behavior goes with this value, and then find ways for you to behave in that way throughout your day. The third principle is leading with authenticity. Now, authenticity is a buzzword, um, but people know when somebody is being fully themselves, when you're being fully authentic. It's very freeing to be yourself and not to pretend to be somebody else or not to mold yourself into somebody else's expectations. So, leading with authenticity is a principle. The more armored you've been, the more disconnected you might feel from who you really are. And so the process of dismantling your armor to figure out, okay, who am I really? That you can start to do that through self-awareness and really finding out what is resonating with you and what isn't. Leaders who show up authentically, they're more effective. They create psychological safety. People trust them because they are the same people in every room, not pretending to be someone that they're not. Um, they also inspire other people to be authentic. The more authentic you are, that's going to rub off on other people. When we think about embracing our true selves, other people's expectations can weigh us down and cause us to show up in a way that aligns with how they want us to be versus how we want us to be. Um, a few years, like, okay, I've been doing this for about 10 years, maybe. And in the executive and leadership coaching space, when you look at other coaches, okay, I don't know how many of you have searched for coaches, but when you look at for other coaches, a lot of them are, I'm going to say, buttoned up. They have a certain way of presenting themselves. They have a certain energy about them. They use certain language. Their LinkedIn profiles all look the same. And I was trying to fit that mold. And what I realized about 2 years ago was I need to be more of myself. I need to show up in my way. I need to wear the clothes that I love, use the words that really resonate with my brand. And as a result, I created an unarmored leadership. I would have never done that if I continued to be like, I have to be in this lane. No, I created my own lane, and that has it's opened up so many things for me. So when you think about being more authentic, you can challenge yourself in little ways. You don't have to go from 0 to 60, right? So you can choose a meeting and show up a little differently. Maybe you're going to be a little bit bolder in your communication. Maybe you are going to wear different clothes. There's so many different ways that you can gently lean into it where you are feeling good. But leading with authenticity, it's one of the key principles. And as you dismantle your armor, the more authentic that you're going to be. The fourth principle is about embracing vulnerability. Vulnerability is the state of being open. It's sharing your emotions, it's sharing your thoughts and experiences. It is a strength, not a weakness. Knights who look at you and, they keep the conversation up here. Everything is really, really light. It's superficial. When you're up there, the connection is it's hardly there at all. But the moment somebody shares something a little vulnerable, everybody's like, okay, it's safe here. And vulnerability is like connective tissue. The moment you are vulnerable with somebody, that person becomes closer to you and you become closer to them. So people who are unarmored leaders, they lead with vulnerability. They're not afraid of it. They understand the power of it. So when you stay up here, you're looking to protect yourself. When you're willing to be a little bit vulnerable, you're starting to dismantle your armor. Now, being vulnerable, it includes you admit when you make mistakes, you ask for help when you need it. Maybe you share personal challenge or a struggle with somebody. You acknowledge when you don't have the right answers or you need additional information, right? You're not putting on this facade of, I've got it all together. Um, the more vulnerable you can be, the more authentic the connections and the relationships you will have with other people. Leaders who embrace vulnerability, there's deeper trust on their team, the teams are more cohesive, and the engagement is more authentic. So I would ask, like, what would it look like if you showed up 5% more vulnerable? How would that impact your leadership? Um, for people who are afraid to be vulnerable with their team, one of the things that I recommend that they do is something that's very, I think it's very safe, and I've never had somebody say that they could not do it, is a safe thing might be in a one-on-one situation when a member of your team is struggling with something. You can say, back when I started my career, I was in the exact same space that you were, and had the same challenges, and this is how I dealt with it. It's an easy entry point for you to be vulnerable and to make a connection with somebody. So all you need are those, how can you be 5% more vulnerable? The ripple effects of that are huge. Okay, the fifth principle. We have seven. The fifth is building trusted relationships. Trust is the foundation of every successful team. When you have a lack of trust, um, I can't speak for everybody, but I'm sure that you've been on. I shouldn't make an assumptions like that, but I imagine you've been in situations where you've been in a group and there's a lack of trust. So that when you have a lack of trust, you have poor communication, collaboration, you have low morale, a lot of toxicity. Sometimes you get these smaller factions of people and it becomes very cliquey. People may be hesitant to share information. Um, let's see. They might be only concerned about themselves and not working towards the team's goals, right? So when you lack trust on your team, it's going to cause a lot of problems. Unarmored leaders, they spend most of their time working on ways to build trusted relationships. They cultivate psychological safety, where team members feel comfortable being open and honest and vulnerable. Trust is essential. And you do that through credibility, reliability, and intimacy. And I'm going to talk more about this in a moment. So, a practice could be that you commit to one little act. You can ask your boss for feedback. There could be a very specific ask. Can you tell me how I could be a better communicator? And be comfortable with that way. That's going to build a trusting relationship with your boss or your peer. We have two more, empowering others. So leadership isn't just about what you do, it's about how you help other people rise. So, empowering a team is a key characteristic of an unarmored leader. You give people the authority and the ownership to actually take on their work. When you do that, when you don't micromanage and you empower others, there's a significant impact on engagement, there's higher productivity, there's stronger morale, and there's a greater likelihood of people achieving the goals. So a way you can empower others is you can set clear expectations and delegate tasks based on people's strengths. And lastly, having a growth mindset. I talked before about the difference between the knight that has a fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is basically, this is the way they are. I cannot grow. People are born with certain attributes, they don't have others, versus a growth mindset, which means I can learn, I can be better, I can grow and look for the lessons in situations. So if you're able to figure out, do I have a growth mindset? Do I have it all the time? Where might I have a fixed mindset? You have the opportunity to figure out, where am I holding armor and where can I become more unarmored by letting certain things go? So, a small practice to try might be at the end of every day, what did I learn today? Or how did I stretch myself? Instead of just thinking about just going about my day, nothing changes. You have to actively seek. If you are somebody that has a fixed mindset and does not think that things can really change, being more self-aware, being more of a detective and seeing, okay, how did I stretch myself today? Where could I possibly stretch myself more next time? Okay, now those are the seven principles. And there are three that I wanted to dive into a little bit more since we're talking about being a better leader and unlocking our potential. So I want to start with self-awareness. Building self-awareness is a practice. It's highly unlikely that you go from, I have zero self-awareness, I don't know what my body is telling me, to I am aware of every story I'm telling myself, every sensation I'm feeling in my body, and the energy that I am giving off. It's a practice. It's about being very intentional, about discovering what your body is trying to tell you, the thoughts, the stories, the beliefs that are going on up in your mind. So, how do you do that? One of the most powerful ways to do this is to journal. And journaling allows you to track patterns in your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. So, asking yourself at the end of every day, what did I notice about myself today? In what situations was I holding myself back or I felt uncomfortable? Right? Being a detective, how did I respond to challenges today? And what might I do differently going forward? Now, for those of you who might think, I hate journaling, can't stand it, there are other ways that you can go about this. One of the things that I've always done is, I mean, I love journaling, but one of the things that I've done is if I'm in the car and suddenly I'm reflecting back on a situation from earlier in the day, I will speak into my voice memos. And now your voice memos, it transcribes it automatically for you. So you can start to use that to look at patterns. Again, you can't change what you're not aware of. So the more you can ask yourself really good questions and find ways to gather that information so you can find patterns, that's going to allow you to dismantle your armor. And also, secondly, a mindfulness practice. So taking a pause before reacting. You want to raise your hand in a meeting, but why do I feel uncomfortable doing that? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What is my body trying to tell me? How is my body language changing? Right? We may not even be aware of it, that we could be fine in our chair. Somebody asks us a question, and all of a sudden, we are shrinking to protect ourselves. Our body is literally saying to the world, I need to protect myself here. I have to shrink. So take a moment to observe what's going on in real time. The second thing is embodying your core values. Um, the language that we choose, our intentions, how we show up, our behaviors, all of those things equal our values. So there are several lists, and I'll put one in the chat at the end. There are several great lists that you can use to identify what are my top 3 to 5 values. Once you know them, you're then able to decide what are the behaviors that support my values. Two things can happen. You could say that, let's say communication is a value for you, but yet your behaviors are when you are confronted with an uncomfortable conversation, you retreat and shut down. That's where the internal tension gets created. If communication is really a value, you are going to openly address what's happening in the moment. So thinking about your values is very important. So for example, my big value, one of them is authenticity. And last week, I was leading a group for another company and I was wearing this jacket. And I have, most of my work is done remotely. And I have all of these great blazers in the closet. And I'm like, what am I saving it for? And I love this velvet jacket. And anyway, we start the call, and a guy goes, Susan, a little formal with that jacket. No? And I could have shut him down, but I didn't. I said, I feel really good in this jacket. I love this jacket. And then you had other people going, I love that jacket. Where'd you get that jacket? Right. And then you had this whole side thing. But I could have thought to myself, okay, I could have gotten defensive. I could have chosen not to wear this and I could have worn something else. So, in what ways are your behaviors supporting your values, right? It's very, very important. Um, you can also ask when you're thinking about your core values and your behaviors, you can think about the example on the slide here. Let's say empathy is a core value. You can ask yourself before you're going to have a tough conversation with somebody, you can say, all right, what's the best way for me to approach this with empathy? Now, again, this gets to self-awareness. You have to be aware. Am I aligned with my core values? What's going on internally? Am I not showing up in a way that feels really good to me? And then the last thing that I want to talk about is trust. This is the trust equation. And building trusted relationships is something that is so important for people, especially if you are a leader of the team. So I'm going to quickly go over what the trust equation is. This is from the Trusted Advisors Field Book, fantastic book. You can also, I think you can go online and they have some executive summaries, I think that you can also get for this. But I love this equation. So trust equals credibility, reliability, and intimacy over self-orientation. So credibility is more than just being credible. It's more than what you know. It's more than your words. It's more than your credentials. Credibility is being able to say in a moment, that's a really great question, and I don't know the answer to that. Let me get back to you. If you are somebody who feels like I got to know everything all the time, even people who are experts at their craft, when they are able to say, I don't know the answer to that, let me get back to you, their credibility just went right through the roof. So, credibility, admitting when you don't know something is huge. The second is reliability. You know what that is. You say that you're going to do something and you do it. You are reliable. People can begin to trust you, knowing that if they're going to give you a task to do, they know that if you say, I'll get it done by Friday, you'll get it done by Friday. That's reliability. Then you have intimacy. There is intimacy in professional relationships, and it's really your ability for somebody to feel like I trust them with that information, right? I know that they're not going to tell that secret to the rest of the team. That is intimacy, right? So credibility, reliability, and intimacy over self-orientation. Very simply, self-orientation is, are you focused on other people or are you focused on yourself? People who are constantly focused on themselves, people don't trust them, right? People who keep things close to the vest, they don't share information because they're like, this information is power. I'm not sharing it with other people. Versus, I got this information, I got this new tool, I want to share this with everybody. It's also when you get into conversation with somebody and they're asking questions about you. They want to know about you versus somebody that's just telling stories all day about themselves and they really don't give a crap about you. You're not going to trust them. It doesn't matter if they're credible, reliable, you're not going to trust them. So asking yourself, what is my self-orientation? Am I focused here on myself or am I focused on other people? Unarmored leaders have all of these things, and they are mostly focused on others. So I am going to stop the share. I know I threw a lot of information at you. And I know some other people joined. Okay, we still have four. Let me just take a quick look at the chat between wrestler and martial artist, knight and fencer. Julie, you said yes to something. So I'm glad. What I
It was
talked.
talking into your phone to instead of journaling.
Oh, so you're not a fan of journaling.
I'm not, but I found that, like other than like venting in your car, right? I found that talking into my phone,
Yeah.
letting it record, like follow what I'm saying, and then going back to learn about the emotions I was feeling and the words I was saying, helped me put things into perspective, unpack them, and then re-engage to hopefully get a better outcome.
And I love that finding, you have to find what works for you. I know a lot of people don't like journaling, but finding ways that we can um, find the patterns and be able to go back. I mean, I'm an avid journaler. I go through a lot of journals over the course of the year, and it's just in December, I will look back and I'll go, "Oh wait, I stopped doing that. I'm doing this now." And it's important for us to be able to go, "Okay, I dismantled that armor. I see that I'm making progress. I'm more of myself. I'm feeling better in these situations." And being able to acknowledge and celebrate that is something that a lot of us don't take the time to do. Um, I'm wondering, before I start to wrap this up, if anybody has any questions, or if you had a big insight, like something really resonated with you, or if there's something that you want to know more about, something that I didn't talk about that you thought, oh, I wish she was going to talk about this. All right. Well, if there are no questions, I going to just start to unwind this a little bit. So, as I said, shared with you before, becoming an unarmored leader, it's a transformational journey that starts with self-awareness, and it's having the courage to look at the patterns and be willing to dive a little bit more deeply into what is driving those patterns so I can start to dismantle some of this crap that I'm carrying around that doesn't belong to me, and so that I can be more authentic. Because when you are showing up more as yourself instead of whoever, what other people expect you to be, it is a complete game changer. You feel lighter and you don't have this script like running on the side, which is impacting your ability to connect with other people. Now, I know what it takes to dismantle armor. I've done it. I've done so much dismantling of my own armor over the years, and I help a lot of people do it as well. So I do it through one-on-one. I'm also continuing to run these, which let me put my next. I have another one coming up at the end of. I'm gonna give you a bunch of links all at once. So, um, the top of the list is that's the Brene Brown values list. I really like the way she organizes it. You can take my unarmored leadership quiz to see what archetype you are. Even if you think that you're this one, you might be a different one. I'm doing my next webinar in April, on April 29th, and it's really about, it's all focused on communication. How do you communicate with confidence, clarity, and connection? So you can sign up for that if you want to, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And the last thing that I'll say is I am doing a group coaching program for the first time ever around unarmored leadership. I've been doing it one-on-one for years. I do group coaching for other companies. I'm finally going to run this myself. It's a beta. And if you have any interest in that at all, I've included the link there too. It's for people who might find themselves at a crossroads in their career. They're not quite sure what to do. Maybe they find themselves at a next level table, like they've been recently promoted and they're like, oh my God, what the hell am I doing here? It can be that, or you can be a leader and you want to be more effective. So if you have any interest in that, you can click on the beta, you can get on a discovery call with me. And if not, and you're just interested in attending these webinars, please attend the next one at the end of April. I'm going to do them from for the remainder of the year and probably into 2026, just to educate people about it, because I know that I've had several people say, when you talk, the way you talk about armor really resonates with me. And to be able to establish a language about armoring up and being able to, I worked with a small team. I worked with them individually, and they're able to call each other out and go, "You're armoring up right now." And it's changed the dynamic dramatically. It's allowed for more psychological safety, trust, and there's a shared language about what's happening, and it doesn't feel awkward to talk about it anymore. So I know we have only 5 minutes. Um, Before I let people go, Any questions, any insights you'd like to share, anything at all?
I just want to say thank you. And I also really love your energy.
Thank
I
you.
think when you kind of put that and the information that you're giving us together, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Julie. There would have been a time where I would have been sitting, I would have not moved. My intonation would have been really this way because I was taught to be very stoic growing up. And
You
that's
would never know.
Yeah.
ah, let me tell you, you have made me so happy because I've had people, not in the last year, but I've had people say, "You come across as cold." I'm like, "Cold? Really? I don't mean to."
Wow. I would not,
No.
that would not be a trait that I would use to describe you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes, not at all, not at all. And I mean, I said this last time also that you just make it you make all the information digestible.
Oh, that's great.
You know,
Thank you.
a lot of times people they speak up here because they want to prove themselves, but you know, you make it digestible for everybody.
Ah,
Absolutely. I agree.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Mhm.
you. And if we're not connected on LinkedIn, please connect. Always great to see. And if I don't see people, I hope to see you at the end of April for my next one on communication.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I'll
Thank
send
you.
I'll send you a recap.
All
Thank
right.
you
Yep.
so much. Bye.
Thanks.